podcast. Hope everybody's having a very good week. We have a lot in store today. Going to be getting into basketball. Elite Eight starts tonight. A lot of games, big time matches. We're going to go over for the girls and the boys side. Obviously, we get into major news. We're bringing on two guests. We're bringing on a head coach for McEachern. To talk about the matchup at Wheeler. Going to be very exciting. And then we have another guest we're going to bring on from Atlanta United. He's the voice for 92.9 The Game. He's going to come on the show, and then we're going to talk some hoops. College, as pretty much tournament season's here. Conference tournaments are starting up. Last couple of regular season games for the major Power 5 schools. And then after that, we'll conclude with just a couple NBA topics and things like that. So how you feeling today, Craig?
Feeling good. It's going to be a packed show, a packed week, and I'm excited to talk about these marquee matchups.
For sure. So let's go ahead and get started, Craig. Me and you were at Corky Kell. So when I barely knew you, but first day, this was at Johns Creek High School. Cherokee Bluff played Kell. Guy I was telling you about, Peyton Zachary just received a major offer from the University of Georgia. So what's your thoughts on that? But before I give your thoughts, I'm going to share my screen with the audience. I want you guys to see this clip. This is the clip I was telling you about, Craig. This is when I knew he would be something special. Yes, I definitely want you to see this. All right, let's see. Here. All right, let's share. Let's see what y'all can see. Okay. Nope. All right, there. So you guys can see it fully. All right. We're going to roll it right now. Hold on. All right. Yeah, that's when I knew. I was like, I think that solidified it for me. If you guys don't know, I was on the sidelines in that game. And I was actually the one that got the clip of that. So that was the moment I was told Craig. He's like, what moment are you talking about? I was like, it's one of the game. I was, at the end zone. Seeing it, Clavin just makes a great play, scrambles out of the pocket, kind of just throws it up. He goes up, high points to the defender, and just go gets the ball. That's when I knew, he
lost him.
Yeah.
That was unbelievable.
Yeah.
And just looking at the season he had as a freshman, he had 6 games, over 100 yards receiving. That was obviously one of them. A big stage like that against Cherokee Bluff coming off an undefeated season, and he just went out there, made tons of big plays, tons of big catches, and this Georgia offer is humongous because I don't remember them sending out these offers to kids that are still in their freshman year. So they're starting to get aggressive early on a guy that obviously showed so much potential his first year. All these big plays coming close to, I think, 900 yards receiving. He's going to have a huge season for Kell next year into the future. And I mean, he's got the speed. You saw the ability to jump. He's a really explosive player.
Yeah, and the crazy thing is he's only 5'9".
Yeah.
Maybe 5'8". I mean, him high pointing the ball like that just shows his potential. So he's not just, you think, oh, he's just a fast guy, just a slot guy. No, I mean, this guy go get the ball, take advantage of that, and, just burn defense in the most of the ways. You just get the ball in his hands, and he's dangerous. So, yeah, as we said, look out for the Kelty next year. But, yeah, we wanted to shout him out. Major offer for him. He's gotten Louisville offers. I think he's gotten other offers, D1 offers, but that Georgia one is definitely huge. But yeah, we just wanted to shout him out. Obviously, he's doing big things, and like I said, I knew at that moment right there, and I was at the game, that he would be something special.
Yeah, there's just so much he can do. That clip right there really shows a lot. High pointing it in the end zone. It's like he can run these slants. He's great with these dig routes, getting over the middle of the field, giving them that option. But to go out there as a freshman, just be able to compete for the ball in the air, that's just really impressive. I can't wait to see what they do next year. And I really think Kell has a chance of making a run to that 5A state title next season.
I wouldn't be surprised, and to kind of expound that before we move on, you got to think about the region right there in, right? It may not be as good as it was this year. Like, you had Cambridge with that dominant offensive line. They're going to have a lot of transition. No longer going to have Will Taylor. They're not going to have Christian Isabor anymore. They're not going to have some of those seniors they have on the offensive line. Obviously, it'll still be Preston Clemmer, who's going to be the quarterback there, but they're going to have a lot of young guys step up. So you could think of next year, maybe it's a little bit of a transition for Cambridge, potentially. So that's their region taking. And as you said, 5A, we know some of the schools are probably going to be there, probably the creek sides and things like that
Yeah,
in Ware counties. But as you said, I think it's wide open for them
yeah,
too.
they're going to be in it.
Yeah.
Cartersville, Calhoun, Creekside, Kell.
Yeah.
I mean, those Ware County, Warner Robins. 5A is going to be exceptional, but I'm telling you, I think Peyton Zachary has a huge year. Bryce Clavin and that Kell offense is going to be explosive.
Yes, without a doubt. Let's keep it going. Let's transition. We're gonna go to some hoops now. Game of the year, I think. Me and you talked about it on the show Monday. Break it down a little bit. I found out some more details about it. But just what do you think about, you know, Wheeler going into that game? And then if you feel like it, Craig, what you mentioned to me this morning, if you feel like, bringing that up and mentioning that potentially what's going on for Wheeler going into that game, you can. If not, but just what do you think of the game overall?
I think in terms of high school basketball games, you can't get a better environment, a better matchup, better superstars in this game right here. Two Cobb County powerhouses, state championship teams. Uh, Wheeler pretty much wears the title as the best basketball program in the state. McEachern, though, recently they were out there competing or getting invited to compete in the national championship. They've been on a tear as well. I just think in terms of the matchup, so many guys that are going to be playing at the next level are going to be going head to head. I think the big opportunity, though, for Isaiah Collier, he has a special kind of distinction as the McDonald's All-American. This game, even though he's done it all season, this is the game where he solidifies himself as the best player in the state. Going up against McEachern, if he comes out and does what he's been doing, it's game over in the conversation.
I think you say best player in the country. I don't even
Yeah,
think.
that too.
I think
Yeah.
it's past state. I think at this point, I think he's about the best player in the country. I think if he goes and let's say he goes off for a 30, 35-point performance, I think, and he has a big impact with facilitating, getting his teammates involved, and just showing his whole repertoire of his game. I think that there just shows enough that hey, I'm the best player in the country because I think that's what he's competing for. Now I think he's already the best player in the state. But
yeah, well, in terms of what you were mentioning,
yep.
Yeah, I don't know. I tried looking into it. Kyle Sandy was reporting that in the North Gwinnett game against Wheeler, it was kind of a blowout at the end, but he was mentioning that there were some technical fouls called. I haven't been able to find anything, but based on the rules, he was suggesting that that would mean that the coach, because of the timing of it and the rules, Coach Thompson might not be able to coach this next matchup, which would obviously be humongous. If that's the case, we'll wait and see. The game's on Wednesday. Wheeler still obviously has the talent to go out there and compete, but that would be one heck of a storyline if they have to go into that matchup without their head coach. We'll see,
Yep.
but that's just what's been reported, being talked about right now. I heard about it for the first time this morning.
I mean, you got to think about it. It is a heck of a storyline. I mean, they were up in that game, winning blowout victory. I think it was a 93-56. And then to have the Texas at the end and potentially lose your coach in one of probably the biggest games of the year. Obviously, they've played a national schedule. They played top tier teams and across the nation all year long. But this is, for them, they want to win the state title. So this is a really big game for them on the road too. This is not a home game. And then I think you said potentially they may be even without one of their top assistants too. So all that is important. Like you need that coach. You need that same, kind of voice that's been talking to you, since your tenure there all the time when you're playing basketball, that voice to get you in, let's say McEachern goes on a run early. Let's say it's 16 too early. You need that same voice that you've listened to this whole time to, get you through that moment and keep you going. So I think that is huge, especially on the road. And then you're going against a coach, as you mentioned, who's experienced coach. He's coached at Pebblebrook before his time at McEachern. He has a plethora of experience. So all that plays definitely a factor.
Yeah, it's not. I call it more, if that is the case, more of just a distraction. I mean, you see it before like a big game in the Super Bowl. If a player gets in trouble or a coach, I think it was Andy Reid's son. I mean, that was awful, but this doesn't compare to that. I'm not saying that, but if just those things that happen when you're on a big run and you want to win that title, it does seem to kind of divert some of the focus away. That's the only thing. But we'll see. I think it's a good opportunity to refresh myself on the rules anyway. If a coach does get ejected, I don't know any of the details. Once again, I found out this morning, but if a coach gets a technical and gets thrown out of the game, do they have to miss the next one? I need to go back and look at that. But we'll see. It's going to be really interesting. I will continue to look into that.
Yes, for sure. And let's move to Elite Eight. We talked a little bit about on your show yesterday, but just what are some games you think stand out to you? Just we don't have to go through the whole thing, but just games you think that are interesting, girls or boys side in the Elite Eight. A couple for me, I think Norcross Newton. That's going to be a intriguing matchup. Lamari and Jordan, kind of versus Stephon Castle. He's already came out and said, I'm planning on taking on that match. I'm planning on guarding them. He's taking it full throttle. I think that's going to be an intriguing matchup out there in 7A. I think the girls' side, Gainesville, Lovejoy is going to be interesting. Gainesville will pull up two upsets in the. They're going against Lovejoy, who is the creme de la creme out there in 6A. Obviously, you got Rockdale County, you got River Ridge to watch out for too. But I think those are interesting matchups as well.
Yeah, I want to talk a little bit about the Newton Norcross one. I think that one could end up being the best game this round. It's really close to that McEachern Wheeler matchup. Stephon Castle already faced Norcross this season. That was in the Naismith, I think, holiday tournament. It's one of the most premier events. It was a big time matchup. They went into overtime, and Norcross ended up getting the win. You mentioned this is a rematch of last year's playoffs. So
Yep.
Both those games have been decided by 3 points. What's the difference? Newton didn't have Ja'Kai Newton in the last game. I think Stephon Castle is going to go off. No doubt. He's going to get to his spots. He's going to shoot. He's outstanding, one of the best shooters in the state. But in that Norcross game, I think he finished, it was like 10 of 17 from the foul line. He's typically a 85, 90% foul shooter. So he did miss a couple, which is uncharacteristic. I just think Stephon Castle is prime for that big moment. I think having Ja'Kai Newton's going to be a big boost. They've already faced them. So I just think having those factors going for Newton, I think they're kind of destined to make that run and see a rematch with Wheeler.
Yeah, I think a wild card for Newton in that game is going to be Marcus Whitlock or MJ Whitlock. He's a player that's not talked about a lot, but he steps up big in the one of their playoff wins. I think he had 22 points against Westlake. He's a wild card player that you could see with a lot of attention kind of being on Ja'Kai Newton and obviously on Stephon Castle, one of those players that, left open, knocking down shots and making, a big difference for the team. So I think that's going to be obviously another interesting matchup to look out for too, as far as in that game. And then as far as Norcross, just they have electric crowds. I hear like year in year out, major primetime playoff games. So can they bring that same crowd and energy when they play against Newton? Again, I think besides the McEachern versus Wheeler game, that is another electric game in the state to watch out for.
Yeah, and it'll be Newton on the road. It'll be huge. I'm also interested though, Cherokee Carrollton. Those are two teams that are going to be a problem for anyone they face. They are well coached. I think Carrollton, the addition of who's the receiver? Caleb
Odom.
Yeah. I mean, that guy can play ball. He's an extremely talented, gifted athlete. He gives them a serious athlete on the court. But Cherokee, I think, is really underrated. They've been outstanding all year. They played Wheeler, the cream de la creme, but I think Cherokee, if they get past Carrollton, they could come out and give either Newton or Norcross a game. The other matchup, Walton and Grayson, it's just going to be, can Walton win with the 3-ball? They aren't going to beat Grayson down low. They aren't going to beat them in the paint. They're going to live and die by the 3, and they did it last week. Just had a huge offensive explosion, but if they can go out there and have a hot night shooting, watch out.
Yeah, no, I agree. No, that'll be interesting. I think that Walton Grayson one as well. That's a good point out by you. Jakari Harris that's been really good, and I think he's an upcoming 4-star. I think 2024 class. So that's gonna be a really intriguing game as well. That Grayson versus Walton game. But another one I think is interesting is Alexander versus Jonesboro out in 6A. I think that's gonna be interesting. Alexander's a really good basketball team in 6A. Jonesboro's been having a great run this year. I think both of those teams going head to head. I think that's going to be a really intriguing matchup.
Yep. Alexander has a size advantage in that one. Jonesboro is outstanding. Another big one, though, Grovetown against Lanier. I think that's a real contrast of styles. Lanier has one of the best front courts. I forgot the guy's name, but he had 18 points in the first half last round. They've got a good 2-player combo down low. Against Grovetown, if those guys do what they did the last round, for Lanier, and then they find anyone that's knocking down 3-point shots, that's going to put a ton of pressure on Grovetown because those two forwards down there, they can score, they can pass. Really good, just facilitating the offense through them. I mean, when your big guys are dishing out 8 assists, 10 assists, that's really dangerous. And then if they can get one of their guys to start knocking down some shots, Grovetown's going to have trouble. Lanier is very dangerous. I also think what's interesting, 6A, the Etowah St. Pius game, I think is just destined to be a last second thriller. And those teams are going to play so close the entire time, trading possessions. I don't see either of them necessarily going on a big run, but I think it's going to come down to the wire.
No, I agree. I mean, that's definitely a good point. Those are going to be some very intriguing games. Give me 1 sec. I'm just texting Jordan to see if um, Jason Longshore is still coming on.
And then in 5A, just shout out to Region 2. I'd say in the entire state, that's one of the only regions that has all 4 teams still in it. Number 4 seed Jones County. You have Dutchtown still in it,
Right.
Eagles Landing, and then Union Grove. So that's impressive to have half the field come from that one region. But I think County, as the 4 seed, they've been putting up some big results. I think, oh yeah, in Jones County, they have a win over Grovetown this season.
Right.
So back when they were in their prime, they've had some injuries, but I think they still can challenge Hiram.
And then what do you think, Craig, of that 5A? What do you think of Eagles Landing and then Kale? Because Eagles Landing's only lost 1 game this year. And then you have Kale, who's just on this kind of hot streak, has many ways they can beat you, right? They can beat you with shooting, with Jalen Colson. They can beat you in their big man. Peyton Marshall's a 4-star. I can't remember he's committed to. It slipped my mind. But very good player, 7-footer. What do you think of potentially maybe that matchup? Or do you give Mays an advantage coming to that game against Eagles Landing on the road?
That Mays matchup will be really tough.
Yeah.
I think Eagles Landing's going to come out the winner. It just feels destined all season. It's going to be Eagles Landing against Kel in the finals. It's what it's been shaping up to. I think that'd be a great matchup. But Eagles Landing is one of the deeper teams. They got a great bench. Guys hum off, and just not many teams have guys coming off the bench where they can score 10 points like that. Eagles Landing has it. And then you mentioned with Kel all the different ways they can beat you. I mean, that's what makes those teams the state champions. It's
Yeah.
not just, and I'm not saying this about Wheeler, but they have someone that's so good, you know how they're going to win. It's going to go through Isaiah Collier. But these other teams that have been dominating, you're 100% right. Different guys can go off. They don't necessarily rely on one guy. They got size. But I think the big thing in a lot of these matchups, especially with the advantages they have down low, is who's going to be able to knock down those key threes. That's going to put all the pressure on the defense and just open up opportunities. If you don't have a guy that can knock down that 3 ball for you, you're going to be in trouble.
Yeah, I agree. That's a good point. I mean, like you said, because on the high school level, maybe college is a little bit harder to do that. You have so many players that can get their own shot and kind of play off of, and you have those guys that can go off that you wouldn't think go off. But I agree. High school level and those dominant teams, you always need another player. That's why I said Jelani Hamilton is going to be a wild card in that game against McEachern, because if one player, as you said, is a star stud, they're going to gravitate a lot of attention towards him. They're going to try to shut him down. So you're going to need your other players to be able to hit down and knock those shots. So I think that's a great point you just brought up. So yeah, that is definitely key, especially around this time. You're going to see it obviously in the tournament. Player not playing well. We said a lot with Kansas in the season. Dylan Wilson not having the best couple of weeks, but other players like Grady Dick stepping up, the point guard stepping up. Things like that all makes a difference.
Yeah, and some of these elite teams, they have those guys that they don't have to be standing at the 3-point line. They can be 4 feet, 5 feet back.
Yep.
And even that, it's like when you have just these pure shooters out there, it changes absolutely everything. I think Eagles Landing has guys that can come off the bench and just come in quick. And I mean, those guys, every time they get the ball and they're open, they're shooting. That's their one job. They don't have the handles. They just move around, get open, and shoot. So I think, gosh, a lot of these games what's your prediction just in terms of the Newton Norcross and how close it's been? Do you see this game being in the 70s range, 80s range,
Mhm.
slowing it down? I just think with the scoring of Stefan Castle, and I think it's going to be in the 70s.
Yeah, I think 70s as well. I don't think it's gonna get as high as 80s. I think 70s. I think it's gonna be another close game, down to the wire. Could potentially see overtime. I say just predict maybe 74-70, 73-70, something like that. It's gonna be real close. But yeah, I think it'll be interesting to see how Norcross, what kind of defense are they going to run, right? We saw Wheeler throw a bunch of different things in that major game, right? When they played on TV against a Wheeler for Newton, right? We seen them run a little bit of zone. We seen them run some press on them. We seen them run 3-2 zone. They were just switching their coverages each time, making it I won't say confusing, but just giving them different looks. So I think it's gonna be crucial for Norcross to do. And as you said, obviously making it tough for Stephon Castle. But again, at the same time, can't just focus on him. They got other shooters. But I think that matchup between Lamar and Jordan, who's a UGA commit, and Castle is going to be one to see.
Yep.
Yeah.
And just watching Castle, so good at getting to a spot,
Yep.
pulling up at the top of the key, has a great jump shot. I think the other thing you notice in high school basketball, some of these teams have what you would consider more typical prototype at a point guard, 6'2", 6'3".
Yep.
He's going to take the ball out. Some of these other teams, they have that point forward, these 6'6" guys, 6'8".
6'7".
So if you aren't used to that in terms of guarding against a bigger point guard that can get in the lane, have the floater, finish at the rim, that's something that could challenge teams like I'd say Blessed Trinity going up against Lee County. They've got a big point guard. Stefan Castle, he's a big point guard.
6'7",
Yeah, or shooting guard, but he can play point. So
right.
when you have a situation like that where you haven't really gone up against an offense that runs through a 6'7" guy playing point guard, that's tough. I just wish we could watch all these high school basketball matchups. It's such a shame. You think about March Madness, you got all the different channels on, you can just flip it. It's just there's so much basketball going on, it's just impossible to get to catch any of it.
And you know what? I'm going to bring up a point we brought up right before the show, right? I even brought it up. Okay, worst case, let's say Final Four, right? Final Four should be at one destination, whether it's in Atlanta, wherever, Macon, Centraplex, Georgia State, Georgia Tech. Do the same thing you do for football, right? For GHSA. You have all the games. Obviously, I think they play on different days, if I'm not mistaken, right? But have all the games, whatever, Friday, Saturday, whatever. Start with the classification: Class A Division 2, Class A Division 1, 2A, 3A. Let those games be, let's say, for example, this weekend, right? On Friday, right? That'll be when the Final Four starts. So let those games all go. Then run 4A through 7A, same time, run that through let's say Georgia State arena as an example. Run those games at the arena, start those games at 1 o'clock, whatever. It's only 2 games per class essentially at that point. So because it's only 4 teams. So those games are going to run pretty quick. It's only 8-minute quarters. So you're going to be able to get those and run those quick. Run those, put it on TV, wherever it is, Peachtree TV, GPB, whatever it may be. You get more kind of excitement around it. The players, obviously got D1 talent everywhere. But let's say for instance, like you said, so many great games, right? Some of the players, let's think about it, Craig. If you're not, and I'm not saying you can't make it, everyone, has different things and they can make it on whatever classification, right? But let's say you're a smaller school. Let's say you're let's say you had a really good school in 2A in Columbia. They only lost 1 game.
Yep.
It's harder for you to get noticed, but then you're like, oh, I got this tape I can go to. I played in the state title game. This is what I did. Obviously they'll have their huddle tapes or whatever, but still, you have that. I was on TV. I did this. Final Four, all on the line, state championship, and then you just go back to that tape. You can use that, going into the summer, showing colleges different things. I think it just helps from a recruiting standpoint. I think it helps from, giving the players a little bit more attention, and I think it helps the overall marketing the brand.
100%. And the one big game that was televised this year was one of the best basketball games I've seen in a long time, the Wheeler Newton. It's just the lack of film in even these first 2 rounds. I mean, it takes all the great journalists on the grounds literally shooting from the sideline and having to take out key plays. It's like it's impossible to find any of these big finishes or big performances. And I wish there was a better way to be able to catch some of these big games, um, just to see them stream, or even if there is an incredible game or a big performance, 40 points. I'd like to see how Walton won the last round. They had their guard go off for, I think, 33 points. It's like, where's the film? It's like
I
in
agree.
football
It's
huddle, we have,
everywhere.
yeah, you can find it, search for it. Basketball, it's really hard to get the film. I just hope that that continues to change. Um, just the excitement of March Madness. So back in, I think it was 2010, that was the first year they had the big contract. CBS, True TV, uh, TNT, and TBS. Four networks going on at the same time. And then they'd have one central studio that would break in all the action.
Yeah.
And the games overlapped a little bit, but you really could watch it all. And I had so much fun during that because I was in the studio, and they basically hired four guys for the entire first two rounds. And your job was, you're assigned to True TV. You only watch True TV. The guy next to you only is watching the
TBS.
CBS.
Right.
You're checking the game. If anything happens, you feed it to the host or whatever, and then they update the fans. It's like, obviously that doesn't exist in this, but it's like, I really wish it did, because just to, I mean, we're going to have Newton, Norcross, Wheeler, McEachern going on at the same time. Some people will be at one of those games, but it's
Can't
just
be at both.
impossible. Yeah, you can't be at both.
Nope.
And then a true fan that wants to see how that game played out, I mean, where are you going to find it?
I mean, you have to look through YouTube and see if someone did it, you
Yep.
know, because obviously it's going to be media at the event. I mean, that's your best way. But as you mentioned, that's a great point. 4 different networks taking it all. You're responsible for this game. You're responsible for that game. You're responsible for feeding this. Or you're responsible for this network. You're responsible for that network. I think that's a great idea. I think even, okay, so we know what the 2 major networks is here, right? GPB. You correct me if I'm wrong, Craig, because you've been in the industry longer than I have. GPB, Peachtree TV, right? Is there any others? Am I missing one?
In terms of television now.
Okay, so those 2, right? Imagine if they did GPB/Peachtree TV Sweet 16. Imagine they just brought it up from that level, right? Say, hey, these games are going to be here. That would be incredible. Like you said, it's so much great basketball talent in the state of Georgia. You know, putting it on that platform, I think, would be monumental and huge. And obviously, I think
100%.
Yeah.
There's streamers right now that literally just stream themselves walking out and about. It's like, you're telling me people wouldn't want to just turn on these basketball games and watch them? Of course they would.
Yeah, you have streamers making millions of dollars sleeping. So, I mean,
and there's just so many games that aren't being covered. I really don't buy that there's a competition to be the one network. There's how many games? I mean, good grief.
Yeah, I don't. Yeah, I mean, that's a great point. I mean, yeah, why
we
does it
got
have to be
4
the
different
one?
locations right now.
Yeah.
We got 2 days just in the semifinals.
Exactly.
There's more than enough games to share the load.
Exactly.
I just wish some of these would be broadcasted, because I don't want to miss it. I don't want to miss the Wheeler McEachern game. I don't want to miss the Cherokee Carrollton. I'm going to be covering the 4A next weekend. I'm excited about that, but it's like, I'm going to miss all these other games.
Yeah, in the process. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because it's like, it's not all at the same place. Like, it's tough, man. Hopefully, as you said, hopefully it'll be, you know, a change. Hopefully they'll see the value. I think GPB, actually, I was going to mention this point, just picked up this year, like the Final Four or the championship games. I think they weren't doing it for a while. If I'm
Yeah, a couple years off, I think.
They took a couple years off and they brought it back, I think, this year. So, yeah, I mean, I think, like Craig said, there's enough for both to thrive in that. Like I said, I think it'd be a great brand of basketball.
100%.
It will help.
Yeah, no, I can't wait to watch the state championships. But yeah, I want more games televised.
Yeah, for sure. We're still waiting on our other guests, but we're gonna transition to some college hoops real quick. We'll see if we can get them on here soon. No word, but we mentioned the team. I mean, you've been talking off air, on air about this team. North Carolina needed major wins, and they seem like they're starting to play some good basketball when they need it most. They were, I think, a first 4 team out, according to Joe Lunardi. They were not even in the tournament. Excuse me, but they were able to upset Virginia at home. Big game for North Carolina. They were able to do that, and they won last night against Florida State. We gave them a little bit of a battle, a little bit of a test, but they were able to pull away. So what do you think about those 2 big wins this past weekend, right before a couple last games of regular season?
Oh, yeah, they definitely saved the chances. Last time we talked, they were on a horrible skid. It was like lost 7 of their last 9 or whatever. The win over Virginia is big. That looks like they're playing much better. It's what they need going into the conference tournament. We'll see, but it was a difficult stretch down the year, but that win, yeah, last Saturday. What was the final in that one? Is a pretty solid win.
That's a good question. I think they won by double digits. North Carolina hoops. 77-66.
And then the
No,
Virginia game.
I'm sorry, that was last night. Virginia, where is 71-63? Yep.
Yeah, so the NC State loss, that was, I think, when that conversation was happening, where it's like, oh, it looks like they're going to be out, but it looks like they have saved themselves, and it's UNC. They've got the reputation and the history, so I think they saved their season.
Yeah, I think so. It's kind of ironic. Lenardi still doesn't have them in, but I think those wins like that definitely helps, and we'll see where they are in the tournament. But they got another couple big ones. I think they got Notre Dame on the docket. I think they got to still play Duke. Excuse me, I was going to say UNC. They got to play Duke, which is a rivalry game. I think that's the last game of the season. I think that is Saturday, if I'm not mistaken. So that'll be a big game. If they win that, I think that's pretty clear cut. They should be in. But that's what we got as far as that game. A major game. Actually, tomorrow, obviously, we'll probably miss it or try to watch it while we're watching the games too. But Texas plays TCU. It's a ranked game. I think TCU is a top 25 team, and then Texas is a top 10 team. So, big game for both teams as they try to kind of jockey for position in seeding and obviously going into the conference tournament.
I like Texas in this one. They have had a bunch of losses. Seems like every time I turn them on this year, they lose. That loss to Texas Tech on the road, that was a big one. Yeah. Previously lost to TCU. I think they're going to come out and get it done this time, though. They just haven't been playing that complete game with the sense of urgency, but I think at this point, it's late in the year. They have just the goals focused on them. They have the bad losses. I feel like they've gotten over it. It's just an opportunity to avenge previous losses. So that's just even more motivation. I think they're going to get it done.
Yeah, I agree. That is an opportunity to avenge a loss. Just continue to build on their resume. I think they are considered a top 3 or 4 seed right now. So, yeah, I think they will win that. I think that'll be a very good game between those two teams. But yeah, I got them coming out. What do you think though about Kennesaw State being one of the top teams in the Atlantic Sun? That's not on our list, but just they're having a phenomenal year. That tournament's about to start up. I think either it was yesterday or today. What do you think about them just probably being one of the better teams in the state of Georgia?
Yeah, I mean, there's a ton of excitement around them this year. I think it's going to be a great tournament. It looks like I actually printed out all the consensus picks for the conference championships. They're going with Liberty. They're obviously a great team as well. But I mean, I like the Owls. They've certainly been getting a lot of people excited around the metro area. They're talking about them. Looks like they have a chance to have one of the better seasons. And I went to Kennesaw for a year and a half. I think they had that year where they beat Georgia Tech when Georgia Tech was better than they are now. I mean, they've had some big wins. The program plays outstanding basketball, and they make a run in this tournament, I would not be surprised at all.
That's interesting. Something to keep an eye on. Definitely will be interesting to see if they can pull off an upset and potentially in the national tournament. Yeah, I think they have a great story. Their coach won Coach of the Year in the Athletic Sun. So shout out to him and what he's doing with that program. I mean, that's incredible. And like you said, it's a lot of buzz around Kennesaw State right now. So very interesting. But let's keep going. We got a couple more topics we want to talk about. This is professional before we bring on a guest. Man, it's hard to say this one, though. But Carson Wentz, he's out. Released after another year with Washington. They save about $26 million on the dead cap. Before I throw it to you, Craig, my thoughts is I was telling my dad this before. I was like, once I kind of saw, like, it didn't work in Indy, and then I saw him kind of falter with them regular season game. I don't know if you remember, Craig, but they went to Jacksonville. So when Jacksonville wasn't very good. On the road, they win. They're in. Jonathan Taylor is not having the game he's used to accustomed to having. But they go on the road, lose that. I think then I kind of know like, okay. Then when they moved on from him, brought in Matt Ryan, I was like, okay, that's probably it. But I was like, no, I just need an opportunity. Went to Washington. Same thing, got replaced by Taylor Heineke, and then now Sam Howell. So, what do you think of his kind of departure, and what do you think it means for his NFL career? I think he's done.
Ooh,
Yeah.
I don't think he's done. You mentioned how much it's going to save him in cap.
Yeah.
Thought last year was one of the first NFL seasons I can remember where we saw all these backups, third stringers coming in and actually having success. So if you don't
Okay, guys, I believe we are back. Ran into a little bit of an internet connection issue. But yeah, back to that point. Craig was talking about obviously him going to Carolina. We'll see what happens for him, but I think his best bet is probably going to be backup QB. But let's see if we can bring on Jason Longshore from the Atlanta United. See if we can talk to him.
Hey, what's up, guys?
What's going on?
Not much. Sorry about the. I think I had the wrong link initially, so sorry if I threw the rundown off.
Transition this over.
You guys hearing me? Okay.
Can't hear nothing. Okay. 1 sec.
Let me know when you can hear me.
Yep.
Okay. Can you hear us?
Yep. Gotcha.
Appreciate you taking the time to do the interview. How are you today?
Yeah, doing good. Just left Atlanta United training. Sorry about the. I think I had the wrong link, so sorry if I threw the rundown off this morning.
No worries. We're just glad to have you on. You're doing a great job. So, Atlanta United, you've been covering them for years. Obviously, this year, they move on from Joseph Martinez. He's at Inter Miami now. Just what do you think, just as far as just the pulse of the team this season, and how they've just been as far as just training and where they are after that big win they had against San Jose?
I think the vibe is really good with this group right now. It's new. It's a new season, so you get that a lot of times. But I think it really feels like it's Gonzalo Pineda's team. The manager has the group that he's been wanting to build around. I think Thiago Almada and the quality that he has. We saw it in game one, coming back to win that match late with a couple of just world class goals. But even today, I think the vibe is really good around this group, and you've got a lot of young guys who are very hungry to prove a point. And this is going to be a really interesting year just across MLS, because I feel like outside of Philadelphia, who is the favorite in the league, in my opinion, they didn't really lose anybody. They were in the final last year. Really good organized team with an identifiable style of play. They've improved. I feel like everybody else is jockeying for position. So, there's not maybe like a lot of leagues where there's a clear cut set of favorites and then everybody else. It feels like there's Philadelphia and then a lot of people trying to get to that next tier. Atlanta's one of them. You got to stay healthy. That was an issue last year, but I like where the team is going into 23, and you get a win like they did in week 1. That's a really good boost for the rest of the season.
And then what do you think separates, Philadelphia apart from the others? Why do you think they're, coming to upper echelon tier compared to maybe an Atlanta that's trying to get there and other teams that are racing to get there? Is it kind of their midfield? Is it their defending? Is it their striking ability? Is it how they put pressure on the defense when getting into the box? What are some things you're seeing from that Philadelphia team?
I think when it comes to Philly, you've got continuity and you've got a style of play that, it's kind of hard to explain. Like, I think the way I would describe it is they press really well. They are looking for a different kind of player than some other teams in the league. They produce talent really, really well in terms of player goes down. They have players come into their academy that know the style inside and out. And that's like kind of the next level thing that I think Atlanta United and a lot of other clubs are trying to get to in terms of producing that talent internally that can walk in the door and play significant minutes in big games. And it does take some time to do. And it takes that continuity with the coaching staff. It takes that continuity on the academy side. I think Atlanta United's academy guys coming through are really getting close. And we saw Luke Brennan, for example, in the match against Toluca in preseason, score a great goal. Brennan is that next level talent that's starting to come through. And where Atlanta United is versus a club like Philly, you're talking about a 7-year head start for Philadelphia. They started in 2010, Atlanta in 2017. And it's the group that's coming through Atlanta's academy that what I'm seeing that are the 14, 15-year-olds that are probably a couple years away, but are that next crop that have only grown up in the Atlanta United way of playing and keeping the ball in possession and creating chances, getting numbers forward. So Philadelphia's done a great job in creating that identity, and that's something that every team is trying to strive for. The other thing about Philly is they're not reliant on stars. It's a team that is kind of that, the team is the star versus Atlanta with a Thiago Almada. So that's a very easy plug and play kind of model, and it's working so far for them. The question is that the kind of model that can win a championship? I think it creates a very high floor, like, because the identity is known. You're not going to have a bad Philadelphia team, I don't think. But can it be elite against teams that, look, might have more talent? We'll have to wait and see the season.
One more question for I thought you, Craig. Mentioned, I thought you brought up a great point about Philadelphia, right? You said them starting in 2010 and then Atlanta starting in 2017. So what's your stance on the new teams that have kind of been implemented more recently, the Austin FCs, the St. Louis? Usually, how long does it take for teams like those to kind of come up to speed before they're contending, for MLS Cups, contending in the playoffs and things like that? How long does that take? And then, what's kind of that process look like?
I think it's different for everybody. And we saw Atlanta win MLS Cup in year 2, and then it's hard to sustain it because, go back in history a little bit. You always had that expectation if you were an expansion team in any sport that you would struggle for 3, 4, 5 years. Started to flip in the 90s. We saw the Panthers and the Jaguars get to championship games year 1, and then it started to struggle after that. What you're seeing now in MLS is, I think the league is really incentivizing these new teams coming in. They're going to give them extra cap space. They're going to give them opportunities to build a really strong team straight out of the gate. But that extra cap space goes away. And I think we saw that here in Atlanta, where players outperform their original number, their original rookie contract. Then they need a raise. You don't have the cap space to keep everybody. Tough decisions have to get made. So I think the teams that come in with an identity and they know how they want to build are the ones that are going to be the more successful. St. Louis has done that. They've only played one game. They won that. But they've come in kind of their spin on what Philadelphia is doing in terms of identity. Cincinnati, it took them a while. They failed to create that identity for a number of years. Now they have it. Now they're kind of starting fresh. Austin is the really interesting one to me out of the newer teams because they struggled. They stayed the course last year and they were rewarded. They had a very good year. They lost game one this season. Are they going to stay the course and continue with what they're building with Josh Wolf, Parkview High School grad? Are they going to continue with that? Or are they going to panic because they got close, start to make a bunch of changes, chopping and changing, and maybe set themselves back? You have to have patience in this league, I think, to build. And then you got to take advantage of your window and you got to win those games when they count.
Yeah, great point. I want to talk about Atlanta United though, and just the identity you were making. They obviously won MLS Cup. They know that style of play works. From what I remember, it's like you get these young, up and coming South American stars, put them as your attack, and then get those veterans on defense, a great goalkeeper. Have you seen that same model where a guy like Ahmad is able to plug right into it, keep that Atlanta United brand and style going?
Yeah, it's always you got to hit on the right guys, and you never know until you get guys in the door. And you know, Thiago Almada is different than Pity Martinez was, and both of them are different than Miguel Almiron was. They all play roughly the same position, but they're very different players. And Pity, I thought it struggled a little bit longer to get used to the league. Almada, it took maybe 6 months. I think the second half of last season, he was best player in the league, goes on to the World Cup, and he started this season on a flyer. Almiron, it took him some time. It's easy to remember the end of Miggy's time in Atlanta, but that first, couple of months, 3 months, people were wondering, was he going to be able to score enough goals in that position? Was he going to be able to create enough chances? He adjusted and he got it. You never truly know. I think Atlanta United is still in that same idea that you said. Young talent, bring them through, put them in the shop window, give them the platform to proceed, and then make that big move to Europe. Get guys that are hungry at that stage.
Mm.
Defensively, now you're dead on. Like originally, it was built with, and again, because of cap space, you could do some of this. You had a lot of veterans, strong leadership. You had a good base, a good core. That's been harder to maintain. You've developed a veteran now in Miles Robinson, who it feels like we've watched him grow up. He's back from the Achilles rupture. He has to step into some of that leadership role. They've also added a really good one in Luis Abram this year that I think gets them back a little bit more to what you were saying, Craig, in terms of having a veteran center back. You've got Brad Kazan. You've got to have that stability there to allow the attacking players ton of flair, ton of freedom. You've got to allow them to do what they do, but you got to have that backbone. And I feel like now with Miles back, with Luis Abram, with Brad Kazan back, you've got some of that backbone back.
And then in terms of Atlanta United's academy, do these other teams around MLS have a similar academy built to that level of functioning that Atlanta United's been able to create?
Yeah, everybody does it different. I think Philadelphia and Dallas over the years have been the two that have really set the tone in terms of producing professional players on a regular basis. Atlanta's right behind them, and again, started much later. So you're really getting that first generation of guys who started at 10, 11 years old in the U12 age group who are now possibly professional players. So you're one generation in. You've already sent George Bello to the Bundesliga in Germany. A lot of guys have gone on to college, which is a good thing too. Maybe they weren't quite ready for the first team yet. Maybe they needed a little more time to develop. Maybe they needed time to develop physically. That's something that comes up as well, we see. But I like where Atlanta is now. You look at Charlotte and Nashville, for example, two teams that followed Atlanta. You're not seeing as much on the youth side out of Nashville yet. I don't think they took it as seriously as Atlanta did straight out of the gate. I think Charlotte learned from what Atlanta did and is following that model, and they've recruited some really good talent. But you got to give a ton of credit to first Arthur Blank because he saw the need to invest. And if you develop your own players, it helps your cap space. It helps your roster build in terms of the MLS rules. You're incentivized to develop your talent. And Atlanta did that early on to as best as you can straight out of the gate. Nashville hasn't. I think Charlotte is trying to do the same, but you put the resources to it. You hire Tony Annan, who knew the Atlanta youth soccer scene as well as anybody, and then Matt Lowry succeeds Tony Annan when Tony goes on to coach University of South Carolina, and Matt is taking it to another level. So you have to have the resources, and you have to have the right people to do it. And I think Atlanta is going to see more and more homegrown talent coming through, really from all over the state. You're seeing guys from the Dalton area who are starting to break through.
Oh yeah,
You're seeing guys from the Gainesville area who are starting to break through, and in the Metro Atlanta area with the youth talent here. Just more and more coming.
for sure. And then I have one more question before I throw it to Najee. 92.9 The Game has been covering Atlanta United since the start. The entire city obviously has been really receptive to it. What do you just take away from the fans' responses, but also just how important it's been for 92.9 The Game to cover the team and just what it's been like to see it just become so popular?
I think for me, having grown up in Atlanta and listening to sports talk radio and reading the Atlanta Journal-Constitution and being involved in soccer, first as a kid playing, and then I worked for the Ruckus that turned into the Silverbacks in the late '90s when I was in college. It's mind blowing, honestly. People ask me like, was this your dream to call professional soccer games on the radio? And it wasn't, because it didn't exist. Like there wasn't anything to dream. It didn't happen. So, to be able to do it and then, be a part of the 92.9 The Game family. And I filled in on Saturday morning with Sam Crenshaw, which, I grew up watching Sam on TV, and getting to sit there and talk about, game day and what it meant, and all of those things. It's amazing. And we're really lucky here in Atlanta if you're a soccer fan, because even in cities that people think are the biggest soccer cities in the country, they don't have the level of coverage, whether it's sports talk radio, whether it's me talking with you guys, whether it's the newspaper, whether it's the blogs. All of it. It just doesn't happen like it is here. And I think it's easy to take for granted that we're in this situation. But when I talk to folks in Seattle and Portland and Los Angeles and New York, they don't get the same level of coverage. So, it's been amazing to be part of that and to help tell the story, and for Atlanta United and 92.9 to realize how important it can be. It's been amazing.
And then talk to us about the game one against San Jose. It was 67,000 fans. I heard it was an electric atmosphere. You were there covering. Just walk us through kind of how the crowd erupted after Almada hit those two goals. How did the crowd go kind of in that one?
I've never seen that kind of a finish in a game live. It's something that, when you get into like games you remember, and usually it's either a great goal or a great comeback or a great individual performance. I've never seen the combination of all of those in a game like we saw here. Early on it was shaping up like a game that we saw a lot last year, where an early goal, you're creating chances, you're getting shots, you just can't find the equalizer, and it felt like it might have been a frustrating night. But Almada scores the first one in stoppage time, and he struck the ball so sweetly. You can watch the spin. It's really hard to hit a ball that hard, that precise, to have almost like a backspin on it, the way he hit it. You can see it spinning back because he hit it right underneath so perfectly. That goal happens, and you look at the clock, and it's like, all right, there's 3-4 minutes here, and San Jose is really starting to fall apart before the goal. Now they're really broken. Can you find a way to win this thing and really create a moment? And that free kick, when the foul happened, I'm like, this is storybook. There's no way this can't happen. And he hits a free kick that's world class. So to see a player who is a world class player lead a comeback the way that was, the noise in the building was insane. It's goosebumps. It's hairs on your arm standing up. All those cliches were incredibly accurate. The first goal, I almost fell out of my chair. Like, it was that shocking and that good. They posted the booth camp from Atlanta United yesterday, and like I slide backwards and almost fall out of my chair because it was such a great goal. And I'm glad I have not seen the video of the second goal just yet because I don't know what I was doing.
And then talk about the impact. They didn't play in the opener, but Santiago Sosa and Louis Abram. Just talk about the impact you see them kind of having on the Atlanta United team. When they come back and then on the season.
Yeah, I love Santi Sosa. I think he's one of those players that's poised for a breakout. He's been really good with this team. He has the potential to be one of the best players in his position in the league. It's a it's a kind of thankless role a lot of times, that holding midfield role. You're not going to score a ton of goals. You're not going to have a ton of assists. You're not going to get all those headlines. But you have to have that player functioning at a high level for a team to work. And Santi's got the ability to be that guy. It just hasn't clicked for a whole season yet. And I think this could be the year for him. Luis Abram, he did come in the second half. I thought he gave a good spark. You're talking about a Peruvian national team player, somebody who I feel like made the jump from Argentina. He was playing at Vélez Sarsfield alongside Thiago Almada, a very young Thiago Almada at that time. Abram made the move to Spain, and I don't think he made the right move to the right club. They didn't really give him an opportunity. He kind of got stuck there behind a bunch of guys. They loaned him out to Cruz Azul in Mexico last year. He did all right. I think if he can get back to that level that he had at Velez, paired with Miles Robinson and with Juanjo Purata also in that mix as a center back, Atlanta United center back group could be really dynamic because Abram can dribble forward really well. He's got a great left foot. We know Miles and his pace and what he can do getting forward, especially on the dribble to break teams pressing. Go back to Philadelphia and what they do. The way to beat a press like that is for your center backs and your fullbacks to be able to dribble past that first line, eliminate defenders, and then you create overloads. And Abram and Robinson could be the guys who help break Philly's press really well.
Great point. In terms of your role, though, obviously you're calling the games, but you're kind of seen as the voice of Atlanta United. So after a big win like the one over San Jose, how many interviews do you try to do just to promote the team and just get out your reaction?
As much as possible. I mean, for me, and it's something that I learned a long time ago. Like, if I can make the timing work, if I can make it fit, I'm going to do it because, I want the next generation coming through. I want people to see what I do and say, that's what I want to do. I want that to be my career. And the game's growing so much around not just Atlanta, but all over the Southeast.
Country.
Yeah, everywhere. Like, there are more jobs in soccer than ever before. And I want kids to see that. I want people to see that there is a career path in it. And I want, just the game to grow. It's in an amazing place. I mean, to be able to see 67,000 plus at the Benz on Saturday, 69,000 plus, I think, in Charlotte on Saturday. Nashville was full as well. Their stadium holds 30,000. It was full. That's crazy. I mean, people talk about the Pacific Northwest as the soccer hub. Cascadia is what everybody's pointed to for years. The soccer hub in this country is the Southeast. It is. Atlanta, Nashville, Charlotte. You go down a level and you start to look at what Darren Van Tassel's doing in Statesboro with South Georgia Tormenta. That was a league champion in the third division last year. Chattanooga's got two professional teams. Huntsville now has a team that's affiliated with Nashville. Birmingham is a really strong, solid team. Greenville has won a championship in South Carolina. So, I want to see it all grow, and I love to tell the story, and I love that so much is happening in our region. So as often as I can talk to people about it, I do. And it's part of the job. I think it's a very, very important part of the job to help everything grow.
And then another question for me, as far as
Yeah.
you mentioned the growth and it growing, across the country, mainly in the Southeast, comparing it to kind of international soccer, right? In Europe, the UEFA, the Champions League, you got Premier League, which is the creme de la creme. You got the La Liga, you got the Bundesliga. Just we've known those kind of programs and things like that. They've gotten to that tier and that level just because they have really great youth programs and things like that. So, just what do you think of the youth programs here happening in the States? How important do you think that is to have the kids going through the academies, learning, maturing, getting their body right, eating right, in order to kind of get to that next level and get to where they want to be, and even helping grow the game even more?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's an evolution. You go back to, when I was a kid coming up and playing, and generations after that, you didn't have professional soccer as really an attainable goal. You didn't have it as an outlet. You didn't have teams nearby to play for. So, you had to try to go to Europe if you could, if you had those means, and it was really difficult. So, youth soccer for a long, long time was about fun and also about getting kids to college, which the college game is still an important part of it, but you're seeing more professional development happen at the youth levels. So Atlanta United, for example, like they want to help players get to as high a level as they possibly can. And they're looking for the best players possible because they want pros. But because they develop talent so well, the guys who aren't quite ready for the pros are going into the college game. So it's flipped a little bit. Instead of we want to send guys to college, which the college game has been built over the years, it's starting to change a little bit, but over the years it's been built on size, strength, speed, power, the physical aspects, not the technique, not the soccer aspects of it. So, they're looking for bigger, stronger, faster guys. And the women's game's the same thing. That's starting to change because the professional game isn't as hung up on the physical tools. You got to have both. You got to have the physical ability. You got to have the technical ability. You got to have the tactical ability to understand the strategy, the style of play, the philosophy, all those things. So the youth game is kind of going through a little bit of an evolution in terms of not just looking for size, pace, power, but technique and teaching tactics and developing that side. So there's multiple pathways. And now you have professional teams into it too, where they're trying to produce professional players, not college players. If you produce college players, it's a great byproduct, but they're trying to produce professionals at 16, 17, 18 years old. So the existing youth structure is kind of trying to adjust. And look, it happens in other countries too. I think it's kind of a misnomer that people think that, like Bayern Munich in Germany, that Bayern Munich develops all of their players from the first time they kick a ball all the way through pros, and they don't. There's all kinds of little neighborhood clubs. There's all kinds of youth clubs that feed into it that help produce guys at the youngest ages, and then they move into Bayern when they're ready. And I think that's what can happen here. And we're already seeing it in Atlanta, where great clubs like Concord Fire, like NASA, like UFA, like Atlanta Fire, GSA and Gwinnett, AFC Lightning, Inter Atlanta. There's so many. It's hard to mention all of them. But they're producing players that then go into the Atlanta United Academy and then go pro. Sometimes they come back to those existing clubs because it's competitive, but that's going to raise the level overall. And what's been cool for me to see this year especially is the growth at the high school level, because it's almost separate from youth soccer, from the college game. Like it's becoming more important in certain pockets of the state, but it's the talent level has improved so much because the coaching has improved across the board, and you've got guys who spent some time with Atlanta United's academy and then come back into the high school game, and it's so cool to see like a school like Johnson and Gainesville, which plays really good soccer. I'm calling Sequoia and Lassiter tonight, two state ranked teams. On the girls' side, you got Buford and Mill Creek tonight, two state ranked teams. So it's just the level all across the board, whether you're talking little kids, whether you're talking Atlanta United's Academy, whether you're talking high school, the level has improved so much, so fast, and there's still a lot of evolving to go.
Yeah, it's so interesting thinking about like how football recruiting works, and then you were talking about how colleges are more about like the measurables. How are all these like young players noticed? Is it really just through the clubs they play? I mean, is soccer just as an overall business just always looking for the next big star and moving pieces around? I mean, what's your sense of just teams, programs recruiting young talent just in soccer right
I think it's starting to get more evolved and more nuanced. I think in the past, like your top college programs were really looking at those measurables, and they were really looking at just the elite youth club level. And they'd go to the college showcase events and they'd watch players and they'd sign the guys they want. But now you're starting to find out, because I think we're getting through the time frame of for a long time, it was really expensive to play youth soccer. It still is, but there wasn't a way around that. And there were a lot of talented kids who didn't get the opportunity to play because they couldn't afford it. Now, with that growth of high school, you're finding kids get noticed at the high school level, which colleges maybe weren't paying attention to before. Now they're getting smart and they're realizing, like, hey, I can go look at these elite youth clubs and go get them, and I know where they are, and I know how to do that. But I might need to go up to Gainesville and watch Johnson play Gainesville. I might need to go up to Dalton and watch Southeast Whitfield and Northwest Whitfield and find talent that can come through my program that nobody else knows about yet and gives me a leg up. And the professional teams too. I mean, Atlanta United, in terms of their academy and outreach, they're looking at those games. They're looking at the smaller youth clubs in different parts of the state, and they're looking for that talent that is unknown that they can bring through and get to that next level, because there's a lot of competition for those top kids that are maybe showing out at 14, 15 years old. There's no guarantee that at 18 they're the same player, and there's also maybe 20, 30, 40 more kids around the state that you might not know unless you're looking, that can play at that same level and maybe even develop further. The thing about soccer that I think maybe adds a wrinkle to it compared to basketball and baseball and football in terms of recruiting and youth development is that style thing. We talked about with Philadelphia. Like, Philadelphia plays a really different style than Atlanta. You have kids in this area who maybe would really suit that style. Maybe Atlanta United's not looking at them as closely, but if they have a means to be noticed by Philadelphia's academy might want to bring them in. And the professional teams are starting to look broader and look at that and say, hey, he's out of our area, but that's a talented player that fits us, whereas he might not fit the local team there. The style becomes a really big thing. I mean, I guess in terms of football, especially, like, you're talking about the difference between a drop back passer and an option quarterback. And sometimes, a school might have a connection with a high school, for example, and that guy's a great option quarterback, but he's not going to go Georgia. So I think soccer's starting to get to that level here too, with the style being a very important thing. And that's cool to see because it just gives more opportunities.
Yeah. And then one more question for me. We had the World Cup this last year. I know a lot of these leagues, they overlap. Soccer does a great job at adjusting. I mean, just look at Atlanta United. They adjusted to the stadium. They adjusted to COVID. They adjust to having players out on international. But with the World Cup being over this last year, is this season more structured? Is there less of the international games going on?
Yeah, it's the windows kind of go that way. Like, a World Cup year can be chaotic in general. Last year was really crazy with the World Cup being at the end of the year because of being in Qatar and, like, physically and safely not being able to play in the summer because of the heat. So that threw a lot of wrinkles to it. I think MLS did the best that they could with it. This year, you do have the Gold Cup in the summer. Their MLS is going to generally play through that right now, and teams are going to be missing players. It's going to create opportunities for that next level of depth for those young players coming through. But this year will feel a little bit more normal. Next year will be interesting because of the Copa America that's coming to the United States. That'll be almost like a mini World Cup in this hemisphere with South America and North America and Central America and the Caribbean, 16-team tournament. That'll be kind of a little bit of a dry run ahead of the World Cup coming in 26. So soccer, I think, just because of the way it's grown, like, it's almost like the inverse of basketball and hockey, in that, it's basketball, I think, is understanding the international game and how important it can be. And you're seeing more talent come from all over the world to the NBA, for example. And the Olympics is the big deal. And maybe the FIBA World Cup is starting to become a bigger deal, but it's slow. Hockey, I think, needs to understand that can be a big part of the game and help grow it. The leagues and the national teams have to work together. And in soccer, they do because of FIFA's overall leadership. And it creates so many different storylines. I mean, Thiago Almada is the prime example. He has a good year last year, gets the opportunity to go to the World Cup. He wins the World Cup with Argentina, played in a game. He's kind of the next big thing for them. And he comes back to Atlanta, and I mean, what a story. We have a World Cup champion playing in Atlanta. Never happened before. There's only 26 of them right now. And we've got one here. So it's great when you have it go hand in hand and you have that back and forth. It can be complicated. It can create some, crowded schedules from time to time, but I think it's worth it in the long run.
And then basically it's the last thing. Where can we find you as far as just your coverage for Atlanta United? I think you said you were calling the game today. You said Sequoia versus Lassiter. So where can we find some of your coverage on, Atlanta United, and where can we follow you?
Man, I'm all over the place. Longshoe on social media is where I'm at generally, and you can always find what I'm doing there. 92.9 The Game for all the Atlanta United coverage. We're doing a lot of additional content this year. I've got a Monday night show called Atlanta Soccer Tonight, generally 11 o'clock on Mondays. You can always download the podcast the next morning. And then Soccer Down Here, which I helped start with John Nelson, with Jarrett Smith, with Nick Alifi. We do the high school games there. We've got a show called Soccer is in Session on Wednesdays that kind of catches up on all the high school action, all the state rankings. We interview coaches from all over the state. And we're going out and doing generally a couple nights a week, Tuesdays and Fridays. We're doing high school games where it's Sequoia tonight as they host Lassiter. And then Friday we're at Riverwood. They're hosting Lakeside DeKalb. Later this season, we're going to be back down in Peachtree City with McIntosh. We're going to be up at Southeast Whitfield. We've already been to Gainesville once. So we'll be all over the place. But Longshoe on social media is where you can get all of that stuff and then find the different platforms that I'm working for.
And then the podcast is on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, things like that, right?
Yeah, anywhere you get podcasts. Off the Woodwork is where all the 92.9 content goes, whether it's interviews during the week or Atlanta Soccer Tonight or March to Match Day. And then Soccer Down Here is a separate podcast that's available in the same places.
Got it. Well, we want to say thanks so much, Jason, for coming on the show today, talking to us about Atlanta United, helping us get informed and, let us know more about the team. We'll definitely be following them this year, and we appreciate you for your time.
Yeah, anytime you need me, just let me know.
Yes, sir.
Anytime you need me, I'd love to come back. Yeah.
Yes, sir. You definitely be a featured guest more often.
Anytime. Appreciate it.
Okay. All right. All right, guys. So that was Jason Longshore. That was a lot of fun. Definitely informed us on a lot for Atlanta United. I felt a lot more informed.
That guy knows his stuff.
Yeah, he does. He's able to go with throwing different things at him, like as far as European soccer and things like that in youth. Yeah, he did a great job. So definitely probably going to go check out his podcast, get a little more informed on Atlanta United, and kind of follow them this season. That'll be a lot of fun. But we got another guest that should be joining us in a little bit, in a couple moments. We'll do a couple more topics, and then we'll talk to the second guest, and then wrap for the show. But let's see. Where did we stop at?
We're going to talk about Bryce Young.
Yeah, we got to talk about Bryce Young. Yeah. So yeah, Mel Kiper basically said, "Guy's too short. I wouldn't draft him." Essentially, I'm paraphrasing here, but I think he says 5'10.5". But just what do you think of that? I mean, I feel like I'm gonna make this known too. I feel like we see this every draft. It's always a player that either is too short or he has this and he does this, does that, and it just never matches to what they produce on the field. So I'll give an example, right? So Will Levis, right? Good quarterback, played for Kentucky, played in the SEC, right? I think he had like 19 touchdowns, 13 interceptions this season, right? So they're enamored more so with kind of, his throwing ability, how far he throws the ball, his arm strength, things like that. But I feel like we fall in love with that as far as players, but we don't fall in love with the pedigree of the player. Like Bryce Young has a pedigree to him that's already been tested, right? He's played in the big games. He's won a Heisman. He's been in the national title game. I just don't understand, where that comes from. Like, we got guys in the league at 5'9", 5'8", whatever, Russell Wilsons of the world, the Drew Brees of the world. I just don't get where that comes from. I think he's going to be a top-tier pick, and most teams are chopping at the bit to try to get him.
I think you're exactly right. And you actually brought something up a couple months ago about over-glamorizing arm strength.
Yes.
It's like if you have two quarterbacks that you're thinking about drafting, it's like, I'm going to take the quarterback that throws it the farthest. It's like, well, you might want to look at the other things he does.
Yes.
The accuracy, the spin he has on the ball.
How he's under pressure.
Yeah, exactly. And so I think it's silly to just look at one minor aspect of someone. I mean, height. You could argue it's a bigger deal than that, but you're telling me, like, being 6 foot.
Yeah, and his weight,
But
he's
they're
like
saying
165.
5'11" and a half or whatever.
Yeah.
I saw him at 6 foot. Didn't seem to be a problem in college. Are players in the NFL really much taller? I've always wondered that. It's like a guy, let's say he's 5'11", 6 foot, quarterbacks his entire career at that height. It's never a problem, but the second he shows up to a combine, it's the biggest issue ever.
Yeah, you remember it went viral. They said it was funny. Joe Burrow like put the kind of spin on it. He was like, "Oh, I guess I might as well retire now since I have tiny hands and it might slip out my hands, can't grip a football." I just don't understand. I feel like at points they over evaluate just like things like that, and like you said, over glamorize just like the arm strength or this and that. But does that translate? Is the biggest thing. Like for me, if I'm a talent evaluator, I want the guy that's been in the big game, that's had to overcome adversity, that's played against, let's say, let's say he played at Texas, played against Alabama, nearly beat them, something like that. Or he played for Georgia, he won me 2 national titles. I want that guy because I know that he's been through it, went through adversity. He's came over on the other side. Not a guy that's, I won't say folded in big games, but hasn't played up to par in those games and hasn't been able to beat the teams when they matter most.
Yeah, I'll take a 6 foot Alabama quarterback over a 6'6" quarterback that didn't play in those big games.
Yeah, and let's think of the recent examples, right? You got the Paxton Lynches of the world, the Brock Osweiler, 6'6", huge humongous guys. How does that really translate? Yeah, they got paid, but did they have those long careers? We're seeing the other guys, the Kyler Murrays, the Russell Wilsons, even though he had a bad year last year. But those guys are having longer careers.
Yeah, I just don't think they matter as much. And I just think it's silly when a guy has been that height his entire career to act like now all of a sudden it's a problem.
Yeah.
This isn't the NBA. He's not going to be trying to rebound people. He's going to be throwing the football.
Well, you're not going to say, well, he has to see over the offensive lineman. Yeah, that's the thing they may say.
I think we'll be fine.
I think so too. Yes, guys, the combine is coming up. It'll be this weekend. Definitely check it out. NFL Network. Be a lot of fun. We'll obviously react to some of the results that we see probably next week on the show on Tuesday. That should be a lot of fun. But let's go ahead and get a couple more topics before we bring on our guests. Let's talk NBA really quick. All right, so we got I posed the question: will Luka and Kyrie duo work in Dallas? They're currently 1-3 right now. Blew a 27-point lead this weekend to the Los Angeles Lakers. Just what do you think that duo? Can it work? Will it work in Dallas? Or do you think it'll be kind of a couple months thing? Whatever, they make the playoffs, that's it. Kyrie moves on.
Well, they're I think 32-30 right now, still above 500. They're sitting right at that. I think 6th in the West right now, 2nd in their division. I think they can make the playoffs, and that's the big key. How do they do in a playoff series? When you have a best-of-7 situation, you have multiple games to work on the game strategies, build on it. I'm not as concerned with one given game during the
Yeah.
That's a guy that isn't often injured, so we'll see how. I mean, seriously, he hasn't been for much of his career. What are they saying right now?
So he's saying he could be out a few weeks. It's a foot injury. He said when it happened, he heard a pop, but he continued to play. But right now it's a foot injury to his right foot, I believe. He's expected to miss a couple of weeks. They want to know the extent of his injury in the coming.
I think it's good news for the Mavericks, just in terms of securing their playoff spot. Yeah, that's tough. Me personally, I'm dealing with plantar fasciitis on my foot, and that is no joke. I mean, those foot injuries are not fun. Obviously, he's going to have to be at his best. So I don't know. I think he's going to rest and have to come back. He'll miss some games. He'll sit until he's healthy, for sure.
For sure. It'll be interesting to see how the Lakers, they've been moving up. They're number 11 seed right now. So it'll be interesting to see how far they can move up. without him being there. And as I've been saying, for years, this team is AD's. I know everybody like bro LeBron, but if they're going to make some noise and make a little deep playoff run, it's going to be AD. He has to be the best player on their team. If not, it's not going to work out. That's just how it goes. But yep. We got two more topics, guys, but we're gonna wait. We're gonna bring in Coach Anchrum to talk about big game McEachern versus Wheeler. See if we can get him on. Hey, Coach.
How you doing? Hold on a second. Let me get my camera open. How's everything going, guys?
Good. We appreciate you being on the show. How are you, Coach?
Tired, but excited.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Well, I'll go ahead and start, Coach. Just what's kind of been your message to your team? Obviously, you've played the national schedule, played some of the best teams in the country. Just what's been your message to the team, kind of coming in this game and getting to where you want to be, as far as achieving your goals and things like that. What's your message?
Thing we've been telling our team, emphasizing our team, is just be the best version of McEachern that we've been all year. We've gotten healthy toward the end in January. We've got a good winning streak, and we've got a chance to play McEachern basketball. So the one thing I've been really stressing to the kids is don't be anybody else. Stop trying to be somebody that you're not. Be McEachern basketball. If we could be McEachern basketball, we'll be fine. Hello?
Right.
We lost internet for a second.
Okay.
Coach, you there?
Can you hear us, Coach? You went out.
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
I was just
Okay.
telling. I said it. I just told my kids and my team. We're just emphasizing being McEachern basketball, doing what we do, the things we do best, how we execute, how we defend, how we run, how we're athletic. Just be McEachern basketball, and that's all we can do. We can't be anybody else. We can only be the best version of us.
Yes, sir. And let's talk about Ace Bailey. He's one of the top prospects in 2024 class, Rutgers commit. Just what makes him so special, Coach? You get to see him every day. You get to see him in practice. You get to see him train. You get to see him be in the gym all the time. I mean, he had a triple-double in the playoffs, 17 points, 17 rebounds, 10 blocks. Just what allows the kid to be so special?
Ace just has something different. He has that it factor. And I think that sometimes, I mean, not sometimes, but all the times you see a basketball kid that has that special thing, and Ace has it. I mean, if it's his work ethic, he has it special. If it's his intensity in practice, he has it. If his intensity before the game, he has it. He just has it. I mean, he's a basketball player. And this is what he does. And he's focused. But more importantly, Ace is the most unselfish basketball player, the unselfish 5-star I've ever seen. The one thing he does, he's always getting his boys together. He's always, in practice, we got to make him shoot because he's always making sure he gets everybody involved in the games. We have to make him shoot more. But Ace is just, he'll do anything it takes to win. And we've seen that. We've seen he's had 30-point games, and we've seen he had 12-point games. But we've also seen he's had 19 rebounds in a game and 10 blocks. And he does everything for us. I mean, I can't say anything extra about Ace. Ace is just, he's an amazing young man.
And then what do you think about kind of the backcourt matchup in this one? I think it'll be special. Obviously, Isaiah Collier is the top player in the country, but you got some horses with you too. JaMychal Davis, he's been having a great season. Rutgers commit, Moses Hips as your point guard. Just what do you think of that backcourt matchup, and what do you need to see tonight to kind of help you punch the ticket into the Final Four from that backcourt?
I believe that the two best point guards in the state of Georgia are playing tomorrow night, and I think that what people are going to see is they're going to see a big time matchup between JaMychal Davis and Isaiah Collier. I think that's going to be very, very intense matchup that you're going to see because you got two guards that play both ends of the floor, and so you don't have a guard that just waits and only plays one side of the floor. And so I think that's what's going to be special about it. I think my job is I got to make sure that JaMychal is not, he's not overexcited to play it because the kid is just so focused and playing, against this game, but he's focused for every game. And then we start talking about my shooting guard, Moses Hips. I mean, I honestly believe Moses Hips is the best shooter in the country, hands down. I mean, I've seen him in practice days where he doesn't hit the rim. I mean, forget going in. I mean, he doesn't hit the rim. And so, between that and then we got the young boy coming up with Jaden Bynes and Christian Curl. So, we got bodies, but we also got, basketball players. And like I said, it starts at the head of the snake, and the head of the snake is JaMychal Davis, and he's going to make sure we're set and we're in place. And so it's going to be a great matchup.
Yeah, and every playoff game is a big one. You are obviously familiar with Cobb County basketball. You know Wheeler. You know what great program it is. we've been saying this feels like the best game in the country this week. But
For sure.
I mean, how big is this for you, knowing that you're going up against Wheeler? It's going to have that kind of state championship feel to it.
It's not about just Wheeler. I mean, we understand that Wheeler's a great basketball team, but for us, it's just game 30 for us. I mean, that's how we look at it. It's game number 30 for us. And so, we didn't, it doesn't matter who's on the other side of game 30. We have to show up and play. And so that was all the purpose about playing all those tough games at the start of the year, is that so we can get to game 30 and be able to look at game 30 as game 30. And like I said, as long as we continue to do things like that and not focus on who the opponent is and get overwhelmed with that, but also just focus on being in control of us, I'm happy about it. I love this matchup, and this is a great matchup. The one thing I got to say about this matchup that I am upset about is I'm upset that this matchup has to happen in the Elite Eight and not in the Final Four of the championship side. And I believe that the state of Georgia has to do a better job at coming together and creating an opportunity to where they can have a selection committee and create a situation to where we can have a more parallel playoffs a scenario, so you get the games that people want at the right places. I mean, our game sold out in 5 minutes. This game sold out.
5 minutes, yeah.
It's sold out in 5 minutes. The game is sold out. I mean, we got students at the school who are upset because this game probably should have happened at the Macon, or should have happened at Georgia State, where they have more capacity to hold more people. So, like, I got college coaches hitting me now, and they're trying to figure out how to get on the list. You guys froze up. Hello?
Yeah, you cut out, Coach. Can you hear us, Coach?
I can hear you now.
Okay.
I said this game. It should have happened. It should have been happening at Georgia State. This game sold out in 5 minutes. So we got students here, people in the community that can't come see this game. This game should be at Georgia State, where you can have the ample number of people to come watch this game. This game should be in Macon, where you have enough seating for the game. So this game, when you start talking about that, I mean, we got to get to the point where we're reseeding this thing when the playoff series happens, and we got to make sure, because all the region tournaments are over by Friday or Thursday the week before, so you can start the region play. I mean, you start the seeding on that Saturday or Sunday.
You know what's kind of crazy? We actually were just talking about that before you came on. Like, why isn't this game, one of these games, at either Georgia State or Georgia Tech, being in the Final Four or actually televised? Because, like you said, this is a primetime matchup. People want to see it and come out, and that's literally what we just said. Of coming together to commit, having those major games at those big venues where people can go out and see them and see them. Because it's major D1 talent on both sides of the floor. Yeah. These are the games people want to tune in and see, and it's only even hard for us to follow it because there's no TV or anything like that, or even going to go see it because you mentioned already sold out in 5 minutes.
Plus, I think that, when you get a situation like that, we can't really sell the product of basketball in Georgia the way we want to, because our biggest game may not happen when it's supposed to happen. I'm not discounting any other team that's in the playoffs, because I believe every team that's made it to the Elite Eight has done some things, some special things. But I believe that, you and the fans and everybody wants to see this game on Saturday night, March 11th.
Yeah, you're 100% right. You have the position to be the home court in this one, but still, it's like you're seeing the bigger picture. There's this demand. I mean, how early are you guys opening the gates? I mean, every article I've read, it's telling people to get there early. I mean, it's just going to be insanity.
I can tell you that our girls playing Central Gwinnett is going to be a great game. But those girls are going to have a crowd that's going to be sold out all the way to the top for their game. So it's going to be an amazing crowd. The gates are going to open at 5:30, and people are going to start coming in, and seats are going to start filling up, and it's just going to be a great atmosphere. This is probably going to be probably the best high school atmosphere in the country tomorrow night. I don't think there's a high school that has a sold out gym the way that we're going to have tomorrow night, because most of those games are played at neutral sites, right? So it's the one time you get a Wheeler McEachern being played at a high school gym. That's great about it, but I think everybody agrees that this game probably should have been happening next Saturday.
I agree, Coach. And it was a part of the game I want to point out to you as well, and speak kind of your opinion. So, Wheeler's a team. He likes to push on transition. Isaiah Collier likes to push the tempo, get out, get easy buckets in transition. So, just how do you kind of limit that, and kind of make it more tougher on him as far as pushing tempo, or even their other players of getting those fast breaks, limiting those turnovers and things like that in this game.
I mean, at this time of the season, nobody's foreign to anything that anybody does. He knows our tendencies. Larry knows every tendency that we have with every player that we have. We know every tendency of the players that he has. At the end of the day, right now, it's all about those kids. I mean, we're giving them instructions, and it's about those kids showing up every night. And so you look at all the strategy that we want to put into it. Yeah, we have strategy, how we want to play them, and so on and so forth. But at the end of the day, it comes to Jermichael Davis, going out and competing against Isaiah Collier. It looks like, J.D. Palm going up and competing against AP. And you look at, Ace Bailey going up against Jelani. And you just look at things like that. Like, those are matchups that we don't have to get those kids hyped about. I don't have to get them excited about it. I got to tell them what their instructions are, what they got to do. But at the end of the day, there's going to come a point in the game where Larry and I are going to be able to sit down and we're going to watch a great basketball game. We're gonna, make adjustments. We're gonna be wrong, but we're gonna watch a great basketball game with some great kids, and so that's what it's all about.
Yeah, it really is as good as it gets. This matchup.
I can't hear you. What'd you say? I can't hear you.
I was saying this matchup really is as good as it gets. I mean, top to bottom, players, the two teams, all Cobb County. It's going to be really exciting. But you were talking about you guys just need to play McEachern basketball, play your best. What have you seen just the first two rounds of the playoffs, just the attitude of the team and their desire to get it done this year?
The thing we talked about is being a connected team, being connected on the floor, being connected in the locker room, being connected, outside, being just a connected team. And what I've seen in the playoffs since our region tournament started is these kids have really become connected. I mean, they are holding each other accountable. They are pushing each other. They are not going to the gym without somebody. They're attacking it. I mean, if a kid is slacking in school, during this playoffs and we bring it up in practice, the kids are getting on them. So what I'm starting to see more about this playoffs is not so much on the floor, it's the connection they've been holding, the connection that they've had and holding each other accountable. I mean, that spills over to the court. That's why we've been having such great performances defensively. We've had great performances from our region tournament all the way through. And then you start looking at, rebounding. We've been connected on the rebounding side. We've been having great performances. But also the way we've been celebrating each other, like, that's been amazing. And so these are the things that coaches, we preach about, but when you see it with your team actually happening, coaches smile about that.
And what's the game day schedule going to be like for you guys, just anticipating this absolutely electric big-time matchup?
Same schedule. We're not going to change. We're going to go to school from 8:20 to 3:31, and after school, the kids can come in and get some shots in. We'll have some pregame meal for them. We'll have our shoot around about 5 o'clock, and then the kids will go in, and then we'll go back to the locker room, and they'll get stretched out and iced and taped and all that stuff, and we'll be on the floor at 7:15.
And then, Coach, you mentioned kind of the accountability of your players, holding each other accountable and, getting other players when they see them slacking in the area. But just what have you seen from an area of improvement as far as just the start of the season when you played that very tough schedule to where you see it now? What's been like the biggest improvement from your team that you've seen?
Just being connected. I mean, at first, it's tough when you bring kids together who are all talented. They're trying to figure out ways how to play together. And that's on any level. That's you start looking at NBA, you start looking at colleges, you start looking at high school, and we only have a couple weeks before the season to kind of get things going, because I can't be with them during September and October, and I can't be with them till the first day of practice. And between the first day of practice and the first game, we're literally talking about 15 days, 14 days. That's not a lot of time to get kids acclimated with playing with each other. They're bringing different skill sets to the floor. So that's kind of what we were dealing with at the start of the year. So what I've seen us evolved in is that, first of all, I've seen pecking order. I've seen guys understand who the alphas are and who are taking care of business and who's going to be this and who's going to be that. And we've identified that Jermichael Davis is our leader. And so the kids understand that, and they've grown to see that. And that's what's been big about it. So the connection, the accountability of growing up, and really just understanding what we got to do as a team to win, and not so much what they have to do to have a good game, which is great.
And then just around the state, guys that you've worked with or just fans of great high school basketball, have they had any input into just how big and excited they are for this matchup?
I mean, everybody talks about it. I mean, I sit here and I'd be lying to you if I didn't say that I haven't gotten 100 phone calls about how great this game is going to be and the level this game is going to be. But at the end of the day, it's my job to make sure that I keep my kids composed and let them understand is that this is still basketball game number 30. Like don't look past it. It's just basketball game number 30. And it's just as important as basketball game number 29 and 28 or 27. It's the same game, and so that's what we're getting them involved with is letting them know it's the same game.
And then my question for you, Coach JD Palm. Obviously, he's going to have the matchup against Ayrton Page. Ayrton Page likes to, get on the glass, create second chance opportunities. But just tell me a little bit more about Palm, what he brings to your team, and just what are you seeing from him just from a growth perspective this year?
JD was young, and I'm saying age-wise, but young as far as how to play the game of basketball when we first got him. And so I'm seeing so much growth with JD as far as what he can contribute and what he can't contribute to the game. JD Palm, I've talked to NBA GMs, not GMs, but NBA scouts about Ace so far and Jermichael. But I tell them before I leave, I said our best pro prospect that could probably end up being the number one pick in the draft one day is going to be JD Palm. JD Palm's 6'10". Everything you see Ace can do, JD can do. He can shoot the ball, he can dribble the ball, all that stuff, he can pass the ball, so on and so forth. He's just not as basketball savvy as Ace is, but the raw potential, he has it. JD Palm is unbelievably off the charts with his skill set. He can dribble the ball, he can shoot the ball, he can block shots, he can rebound, he's athletic, he's fast. JD Palm is everything we need. And so right now, we just need JD Palm not to understand that the moment that he's about to walk into tomorrow night is the same moment he walked into in Duncanville. It's the same moment he walked into the first game of the year we played against Green Forest. It's the same game. And so when you start talking about guys who haven't been on this level on a regular basis, this is what's new for them. So that's why you got to have people like Jermichael Davis who can calm him down and can say, listen, big fella, this is what I need you to do. And that's what we're getting out of JD right now. We're getting a more composed, calm JD. Don't get me wrong, there's places in the game where JD kind of doesn't, he kind of does lose his focus, but he comes right back. And whatever we ask out of him, he's going to do. And he doesn't do it with arguing. He doesn't fuss. He doesn't complain. He just gets it done. And that's amazing for a kid that's top 15 in the country in his class to say, I'll accept anything you want me to do, coach. You got to love it.
I agree. And then, Coach, talk to me about, playing that national schedule. Walk me through how it is, for you scheduling it, you have to get in contact with just to kind of, get those games, so your team, as you mentioned, not having as much time, not meeting with them until later, like October, 14 days before practice, as you mentioned. Just how important is that for them to play against those really great teams and kind of get that cohesion going early in the season?
Well, when we started the season as far as scheduling, when I first got the job last year, the thing I had on me was everybody wanted to play McEachern. They thought we were down. They wanted to play. So what I did last year is I played everybody. Anybody wanted to play us, I played you. So I played Wheeler last year. I played Grayson. I played North Gwinnett. I played anybody wanted to play Pace. I played everybody wanted to play me because they thought we were down, and it grew my team. So this year, coming this year with the type of talent that we had, sure, everybody wants us to be in their event, and that's fine. And I want them to be in that event. But the one thing you'll always hear about me and my teams that I've always coached is that we will never duck a game. We will play anybody, anywhere, at any time, because at the end of the day, you guys, the fans and the kids, they want to play against the best possible competition. But for me, what that does for me is that gets those nerves of what could happen tomorrow night. It gets them out the way early. Let's get those nerves out the way in October. November and December. Let's get those nerves out the way and start building up the pace of how we play in January. So now in January, we're playing 11 games in January, 12 games in January. So you look at things like that. I'm doing all that scheduling because I understand how we have to get prepared for this stretch run. And I think it's prepared us for this stretch run.
Absolutely. And then just as a player, you played in some big games too. So what'd you use just to tell yourself on handling the moment?
For me, I played so long ago, I can't even remember those moments of those big games, the Arizona games and playing against Jason Kidds and Ed O'Bannons and all that stuff. But the one thing I do remember is that my coach Rav was always good about making sure that we had we had everything we needed before the game, and to let us know that it's just the game. Like, it's just game 29. It's just game 30. It's just game 31. And so once you start getting the kids to understand is that those type of situations where you understand where it's just a game, do your job, it calms them down. So we gets to the point where there's a lot of emotion put into it. So the emotion of coaches are really emotional about this and about that. Well, you put those emotions in the kids, and emotions they're fickle. They come and they go. You know, one day you're up, one day you're down. But if you teach them that this is what it is, then they stay confident, they stay focused, they stay attentive, they stay accountable at that moment to that game. And that's all it's about. So that's what Rav did for us, and that's what I'm trying to do for these kids. Plus, Rav also made sure practice was a competition in its own right. Like, we competed against Harold and those guys every day in practice. So I'm making sure that Ace has to compete against Dozies and Christians competing against Jamichaels and so on and so forth, so that when the game comes and if one of them gets in foul trouble, it's the next man up. Got to prepare for that. And what also helped us too a lot this year is that Jamichael Davis getting hurt in December helped us, because now we get a chance to grow a kid like Jaden Bynes, who was supposed to play JV this year, get a little bit of time on varsity to fit, kind of grow up a little bit, and he had to be thrown into the fire. And so for the entire month of December, we go 4-4, and everybody thinks that's bad. And I'm like, that's amazing, because this kid had to play point guard against some of the best teams in the country for 8 games. Now, come playoff time, he's in our rotation. He started a couple of games. He's doing everything we need him to do. So it was a blessing for me in the way the schedule happened, and also the basketball guys with Jamichael getting hurt early and being able to rest and rehab and come back. And now Jaden can slide back to what he was doing and be more confident in what he's doing. So all that's helped.
Yeah, that's definitely big too, Coach. Even going to next season when he has to, potentially even take a bigger role as well.
Absolutely, he's gonna have to take a big role. And Christian Curl, and I mean, I got a sophomore right now that's been dealing with knee injury all year, and Isaiah Delaney. He's gonna end up being 6'8" next year, and he's gonna have the same type of jump that Darion had at Grovetown between his sophomore and junior year. So I got that coming, and so I want to make sure that these guys are prepared for that moment, and that all starts in practice.
More question from me, Coach, and I'll throw it to Craig for a close out. Just tell me about kind of the youth. Obviously, you get to see, kind of them from freshmen and then JV and then obviously to varsity. So how important is that kind of the development, seeing that, them young and then where they are kind of today? And then what do you do far as just to get them trained and prepared to be able to play, that varsity level and that brand of McEachern basketball?
I mean, with the youth, I mean, I'm going to play kids that are prepared to play. And if you're prepared to play as a freshman, you'll play. But it's the competing against everybody in practice is what is going to grow that kid. And so competing in drills, competing in competition things, competing in going up and down the live work, competing with, shots and workouts, all that stuff is about competing. And so when you get kids that wants to compete early, and let me be honest with you, I'm not everybody's cup of tea, because I'm not the coach is going to say, oh, you're a senior, so you're now automatically going to play. There's a freshman that's putting the work in that can give us a chance to win, and that's competing and is winning this competition. He's going to get that chance. And so I think kids want to do that. As far as like on the development, how we develop them, I think I got one of the best skill development trainers around in David Hudson. And, he's trained Colin Sexton, he's trained Dwight Murray, he's trained, Merv over at Pebblebrook. He's helped train Jared Harper. So, and his skill training is off the charts. And so when I have that type of infrastructure built around me, and I got the kids that want to compete, I mean, those are the foundations of success.
Yes, sir.
Awesome. Well, Coach, I'll let you go. Best of luck tomorrow night. It's a great game for Georgia high school basketball. Great opportunity. I wish more people could see it. It's going to be packed, but best of luck, Coach.
Thank you so much, and I appreciate you guys. And I think it's going to be streamed online. I don't know. I think GSHA is going to, no, Georgia Public Access is going to show it.
Georgia Public Access, you said?
I think they're going to stream it. Yep, I think they're going to stream it. So
okay, I'm going to have to get that link.
Spread the word.
Yes. Thanks again, Coach. Good luck tomorrow.
No problem. Thank you.
Yes, sir. All right, guys, this is McEachern coach. A lot of fun having him on the show, learning more about his team. That game is going to be electric. I mean, how cool is that? Hold on, we're going to take out this real quick, y'all, before we conclude this show.
I like what he said about J.D. Palm at 16, center, the sophomore. Believes he might.
He said Bailey. He said better than Bailey, and then he said Bailey's already elite. But then you couple that and said that's probably could go as a top pick or number one overall pick in the NBA. That's pretty incredible.
6'10" sophomore. So yeah, this is a must-see game. I mean, anyone not trying to check it out, when we find that stream, we will be retweeting it out for sure. You will not want to miss
some must-see TV. But yeah, I thought before we wrap up and do our last two topics and conclude the show, I thought it was important. Me and you just discussed it on the show, and even the coach just kind of, ironic that he says the same thing. Like
he's
that
100%
should be
right.
I mean,
he's willing to forfeit home court because he knows that it's sold out in 5 minutes.
Yeah.
In order to promote Georgia high school basketball, these games need to be seen by more people, and the demand's obviously there. I mean, this is
clearly
a huge game. Everyone covering or following high school basketball this season knows it's the biggest matchup. It's going to be tremendous.
Agreed. But we're gonna leave it there, y'all. No, it's definitely a longer show today, jam-packed. We got two more topics we want to conclude for today. Quinn Snyder was just announced the new head coach for the Atlanta Hawks. Craig, what are your thoughts? What do you think about the kind of rumblings about Trae Young? Kind of called out a guy from 92.9 The Game when he made his comments. What do you think about that whole thing and him being the new head coach?
It's been interesting. It feels like fans are definitely questioning the future with Trae, whether he's the guy or not. I think the Quinn Snyder pick, it kind of makes sense. He was with Atlanta before under Coach Budenholzer, but that was a while ago. And so you have these new pieces. You're bringing back a coach that was there. It's like, I don't think it's necessarily this move that shows they're ready to completely go in this direction. It seems like they're still evaluating whether or not it's going to work out with Trae Young, probably by the midpoint next season, but we'll see.
Yeah, I think it's going to be interesting. He did have some success at Utah. They never did get to a conference finals berth, but, he did help develop and, young superstar Donovan Mitchell. So, I mean, yeah, I really think this is probably it. I hate to say it, but this is probably the last shot as far as just that core group they have. We've seen John Collins and rumblings and things like that, him possibly getting traded. But yeah, I think this is it. I mean, this is the third coach now in the Trae Young era, and I'm not calling him out or anything like that. But if it doesn't work this time, you're probably going to see them potentially move on. I mean, it's the third coach. So we'll see how it works. And then they gave up those picks to get DeJounte Murray and bring him in and, hopefully, be a better team. So I think this will probably be, the real true test to see what Atlanta's going to do. If they're going to tear it all apart, move on, rebuild, or if they're going to, continue going.
Yeah, they definitely need to make that decision. I think with Snyder, what he was able to do at Utah, have a top 10 defense. He will bring that aspect, his own coaching style to it. But yeah, the big question mark is Trae Young's future, because a player like that, he's a long-term investment. And the moment you get the sense where it's just not going to work here, he'd be better somewhere else. We got to move on.
Yep.
That's going to be a big decision, and it's certainly one they're going to have to make in the next probably year.
Yeah, for sure. And then last topic to conclude the show, MVP pick and prediction. Right now, everyone's saying this is Nikola Jokic's third MVP, third consecutive MVP. They are a 1 seed this year, so definitely warranted. One of the best players in the game. Passes the ball exceptionally well. Puts pressure on defense, has an unstoppable shot. Just who's your MVP pick, and who you think's gonna?
I think he's definitely going to three-peat on Sunday in their latest win. I wrote the stat line down: 40 points, 17 rebounds, 10 assists. It's his 23rd triple-double and his 14th in the last 19 games. So will there be voter fatigue because he's won it the last 2 years? Maybe, but not when he's playing like this. I mean, that's just insane. 14 triple-doubles the last 19 games, number 1 seed right now, and then the big overtime win against the Clippers, 40 points, 17 rebounds. I just think he's back to form right now and is definitely making a inarguable case if he keeps it up like this.
Yeah, it'll be tough to kind of dispute who it'll be. You know, I got my eyes on Embiid and Tatum. Those two will be interesting to see. But yeah, I think it is for the most part pretty much Nikola Jokic, unless those
Yeah,
two
you're getting
have
a triple-double every night.
Yeah, it's hard to battle against. Unless those other two just start going off, I mean, it'll be pretty tough. But we're going to wrap it there, guys. Definitely a jam-packed show. A lot of fun. Talked to two different guests today. We will see you guys next Tuesday for another episode of Underrated and Overlooked Podcast. Tune in tomorrow to Craig's show, GHSA Drive for the State Towel, and my show on Thursday, Keeping It Real with Najee Wilkins. But make sure you go to scoreatl.com. We will have the coverage for the playoffs, the Elite Eight, all the games. Go to scoreatl.com and AJC. And we'll see you guys soon.
See you guys.